Welcome, everybody that is here. And we got a bunch of folks that are joining us. We have multiple agencies. Always love to see multiple agencies. This is a pretty interesting topic because it's pretty focused, right? So we're talking about some very specific issues in the cyberspace and how to really solve those problems. This will be the best briefing ever, Shelby says, from the Air Force. One of your old buddies, huh, Daniel? Is that right?
That's right. Air power.
So that's right. It expands on utilizing automation to identify and overcome supply chain issues caused by unanticipated threats. Wow, that's a winner. No problems with supply chain either, right, guys? Just saying. All right, so Sharon from the VA, it's a requirement for all leadership in the VA. Sharon, we will reinforce that entirely, and it's on you to make that. I'm just kidding. We know that that's probably going to be a challenge, which is why we do these. So Mary from Transportation FAA, briefed in layman's terms. How you like that? Now that's the one that I gotta smack Daniel around because, man, you start talking to Daniel and everything, he can go down into any kind of weeds you want to go into. All right, Reginald with the FAA. If you can attend, Reginald, if you're here, you made it. It's the best briefing you ever had because you got to be able to attend. Ebony from FEMA. We have a visual aspect. Fantastic. We got some visuals for you. Right, Daniel? We got visuals?
Absolutely.
All right. And Donna from the VA, I understand what my role is and what's expected of me. Always great to have. And Sharon from the VA, we can apply the knowledge acquired immediately. So Stephanie, we have to bring something that can be applied immediately.
Absolutely.
There you go. So please address this. Reginald said, if he's here, the agenda stated above. Okay. What was the agenda? We'll talk about that in a minute. Marcus, how we can get agencies to communicate threats and actual attacks faster. Big problem, right? Right, Stephanie?
Absolutely.
That's one of the biggest issues you'll find is communication.
That's faster.
Donna from the VA, open to what is being discussed and the impact is nice. And Tim from the VA, how automation can stop the spread of malicious code. I do believe we're going to be talking about those types of things, right? Right, guys?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get into it. So what you have as far as the handouts, a briefing presentation, B Technologies capabilities, the CoLab tech sheet, kill chain example, and supplemental resources. I love that, what you did for that, Daniel, creating that for us so that we can do that. If you've lived under a rock and you have no idea that this is Zoom, you can go up top and you can take side by side and you can use that little, a very technical term here, Stephanie, that doodah right there that you can move back and forth, make us bigger and smaller. If you're participating, fantastic. We love it. Do us a favor, put all your favorite musician and where you're from in the chat, as well as anything else you want anybody to know about. And our docs are going to go into the chat. And then if you have questions, we're going to put that in the raise your hand category or in the Q&A so we can keep these things going together. And if you want something super secret, make sure for private dialogue, you reach out to S. Miller at B Technology Incorporated if you don't want the whole world to know what you're talking about. A real quick disclaimer, this is not endorsed by any agency, is provided to you for informational purposes only. And guess what? Your participation is voluntary and it's not an indication or endorsement or commitment to purchase from any vendor. This is what the legal folks gave us so that you can participate and actually talk. All right. So speaking of talking and participating, what made you decide to join us today? And is it because you're trying to get your head around this whole kill chain idea? I'm on the hot seat for cyber protection. I want to know how to solve my cyber issues faster. I have a cyber issue right now. You can pick as many as you want, by the way, or my boss made me come. So that's for all the Weisenheimers out there that wind up doing that. And as far as the agenda that we were talking about earlier while you're answering that. So we'll get into who Stephanie and Daniel are and why they're doing what they're doing, give you a topical overview, kind of give you a lay of the land of what we're going to go and dive into, and then we're going to dive into it. You have some really great examples, Daniel, of real life, right? Real life examples and how you within your agency and what you do within your agency can empower you to be able to kill those, get involved in kill chains. And we'll get to your Q&A. We'll probably smatter that throughout that, if that's okay with you guys. If anybody has an important one or it's topical where we want to hit the mark. And then we'll get you out of here as quick as we can because we know you have things that you have to do. And we'll give you another 5, 4, 3, 24 of 20%. 7. That's not bad. 88%. We have 3 people that we put into a coma so far, apparently, Stephanie. There we go. Oh, no, just 2. Only 2. All right. So you got 2 seconds. 2, 1, boom. All right. So here's what we got, guys. I'm trying to get my head around kill chain. Not bad. That's a good place to be, right? And on the hot seat for cyber, and I want to know how to solve my cyber issues faster. Love it. Really appreciate you guys. And obviously we had somebody, the outlier, that's the comedic person whose boss made him come. So Stephanie, give us a background of how you got started. You've been working in the federal world for quite some time, right?
Yes, absolutely. I've been working in Fed space for over 20 years, close to 25 now, primarily within DoD, but some of the civilian agencies as well. I've run major programs for companies like Perot Systems back in the day and Dell Federal. I've worked for some small companies as well. And I branched out on my own a few years ago. So started a woman-owned hub zone company and just relocated down here to Austin, Texas. One of my big customers is Army Futures Command and the Fort Hood Network Enterprise Center. We do IT infrastructure operations, everything from desktop to sysadmin to VTC. We do a lot of VTC with Army Futures Command. And we do a lot of cybersecurity. We do everything from the RMF process, and I'll date myself, going all the way back to the old DIACAP process. So, been involved in cybersecurity for quite some time. And over the last few months, I've gotten partnered up with Collab. I saw what they do and met Daniel and his background. And we're here to tell you more about what they can bring to the table. And
absolutely. And it's interesting. First of all, congratulations on starting your own gig. I know it was 5 years ago, but it goes pretty quick when you're doing this world. And thanks for all you're doing in the cyber protection space, because it's not going away. None of the bad guys are getting pretty smart at what they're doing, right?
Absolutely. And you'll see some stats along the way of how rampant it is and how much those attacks are increasing year over year. Yep. And
so let's get into it. So
if we Brian, could introduce Daniel and Collab.
Introduce Daniel.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, folks. So Daniel, if Daniel Robert, if you're mad at me. But other than that, so I got into cyber. I'm sitting in the hot seat of Collab Technologies as CEO. We're a company based out of Maryland. But the way that I got to where I am now is as an operator. So I started out in the Air Force Intelligence, doing that for quite a few years, and then got assigned to Fort Meade in Maryland, which happens to be, NSA up in there. And worked for the NSA for about 14 years doing incident response, digital forensics, and basically all C&D, CNO type operations, variety of different things throughout that area, which led me to the issue that I left the government to create Collab, which was the inability to effectively and rapidly communicate threats between organizations. I mean, we were doing things with Excel spreadsheets and the like and emails. It's just super inefficient, and wanted a way that could take highly technical artifacts and information, put them into something like a kill chain, something that others at the organizational strategic level can digest and understand while still being able to go back down to the technical level, and then be able to rapidly and efficiently disseminate and distribute that to others with visualizations baked into it. So nice. That's where we're at today, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, somebody was asking for visualization. That's fantastic. So what are cyber kill chains? What is the rapid
Absolutely.
Response? You were talking about rapid response, and why do you even care about this stuff, right?
Why does anybody care about this stuff, right? Well, obviously, it's easy to jump on the bandwagon and say cyber is everything everybody cares about right now because of the big issues. But the reality is that it's true. It is what we care about. But the problem is in cyber, and I think this problem is going to be ongoing for many, many years, is that there's a lack of understanding from the technical level what a piece of ransomware or malware is doing at the artifact level, whether it's encrypting your hard drive, it's modifying your registry, whatever it's doing on the technical level, to understanding what that means to my business and how I can better react proactively to that threat. And cyber kill chains address that. The way that they do that is by bringing the process of the malware is following up to the front. So if you have an email that was sent with a PDF, that PDF launches a loader, which gets out to the internet and downloads something and installs that. That is a part of a kill chain that is very needed, is very necessary to be understood for a couple of reasons. Attribution, prevention, so you can go over and knock over those C2 nodes or whatever beaconing path that malware is taking. And then also to be able to save time, you need to automate the ingestion of your different sources of information that's coming from. And that's why the kill chain, when you bake that together properly in an organization where you have your systems tools and your IT sysadmins and your security team, your SOC, working with threat intelligence analysts, maybe vendors, external MSSPs, service providers, and everything, coming together and saying, okay, we have all this wealth of data. Now let's communicate that up and say, this is what happened from here to here, and this is why we care. And now from here, what are we going to do? We need to provide accountability for that. So if we're going to get audited for, what happened, what do you understand about the attack that took down, a pipeline, for example, and how can we remediate that? And how can we properly make sure that same attack does not occur again in the future, right?
Yep.
And that's what the kill chain delivers to you on a gold platter.
And it's huge. The impact of this is really big, right? The dollars and cents, the impact on your organization. When something like this happens, you're going to go through some really cool examples, by the way. Probably not cool example, but real life examples, right?
I mean, cool to us, not cool to the people that were sitting there in the hot seat going through them, right? But
darn right.
Yeah. But the cool thing too is that, I mean, we should all care about in the cybersecurity space, right? At the end of the day, we should all be focused, in my opinion, on collaborating and communicating more efficiently. And that's what kill chains at the end of the day are going to help empower, is that communication and that collaboration to make sure that our partners, the members, if you're within the manufacturing space or if you're concerned about your supply chain, right? This is what happened to me. This is what happened to our team. This is what we saw. Does anybody else see this, right?
Yeah.
And it's a vastly different thing than to provide an Excel spreadsheet with a bunch of hashes in it and say, does anybody else see this? Versus, hey, these are the actual TTPs. These are the actual tactics, techniques, and procedures that we see the malware doing and executing on. And that's actually why the federal government, so this goes back to the early 2000s, the cyber kill chain concept. The federal government worked with a couple of other defense contractors in academia to come up with an effective way of bringing this to the forefront. And if you hear things about like MITRE attack and tagging and all those other components, that's all part of that kill chain analysis. And we'll go into that a little bit later. Yeah,
we definitely will. So what have you experienced within your organization? I'd be shocked. You can pick as many as you want, by the way, and a lot of folks will probably pick them all. Hack, phish, ransomware, malware, denial of service. You might have some others in there that may not come up to this level, but we're all familiar with these types of things that are happening with us every day. And these are real life challenges. Some of those are on the personal level, even where personal identity's been compromised, data breaches and things like that. But results of hacks and phishes and ransomware, we hear about these. And you're going to take us through a couple of these. And we have this as one of the handouts. Is here's an example of a kill chain, and we'll keep this poll open for just a second while everybody answers that. But take us through this a little bit, Daniel. What are we looking at? Because that's a lot of circles and rectangles.
A lot of circles and rectangles, and this essentially is the technical visualization of a kill chain, right? Of a piece of ransomware that was successfully executed within a client environment. And that far left, you got a PDF. That PDF was embedded inside of an email. So the client received an email. Obviously, that email contains confidential information that you would not want to share outside of your organization, like personal names, PII information, right? Especially if you're in Europe or dealing with European partners, that could be confidential as well. So we stripped that out. That's not really as relevant as what happened with that attack. So you have a PDF. That PDF in turn contained an executable. So when you open that PDF in a Windows machine, it's going to launch and execute that executable, which in turn is just basically a dropper. So that PDF pulled down and dropped another executable, which was actually the ransomware, which triggered a bunch of different things. You can see other files. There's 11 other files that it downloaded and put on the machine. And then created an import table, but importantly, we were able to identify that using threat intelligence information that came from a vendor. In this context, it was ReSecure. Mandy and a bunch of other vendors would have also identified this, not pointing out one specific vendor. But the important thing is that we have from PDF, that was an email, all the way through the execution process on the machine, and then those tags on the far right, those are used to identify, remediate, and eliminate the malware from your system. Say, okay, this malware specifically, it's doing this for lateral movement back and forth. Highly technical information, but at the end of the day, that's the information that any SOC team worth its salt is going to be able to identify that and say, oh, this is what I need to go out and look for. These specific TTPs, these specific actions, not necessarily just that file. So again, highly technical information that's very valuable at the lower level. But if you have an ability to digest and present this in an automated fashion, which is what we do in our company, but have the ability to create these kill chains that you can then just pass off and share to somebody else. No longer are we just concerned about a file hash. Now we're concerned about the entire process and how that happened. Right.
Because it quickly, you're talking about the spread and how fast things can spread, and we got to play catch up once it happens. And let me share this out real quick for everybody to see. Hack, phish, that's one of the biggest ones. Many times we talked about the implications of a phish, and they're getting pretty good at it. That so much so, we talked about security and the fact that a lot of folks from security clearances, there was a breach there, right, guys?
Yeah, OPM.
And those have created very sophisticated phishes that are causing many problems. All right, so let's hop into this deep dive on what happens in these particular responses, and take us through what you got here, because this is really amazing as far as the dollars and impact are concerned.
So this is focused on ransomware, right? And obviously there's a bunch of different types of attacks that can happen, from Trojaning in and gaining access to a system for command and control. But this is specifically looking at ransomware attacks and how we can better, if we have better visibility on those attacks, how we can better communicate and help stop those attacks from working in other organizations and systems. The average attack, this is numbers for 2021, right, was $500,000. So now this is where the throwing out the numbers on attacks and the cost. That's averaged over, that includes residential attacks, so commercial and residential. So in other words, like your grandma clicked on an email and her laptop got encrypted and she spent $40,000, all the way up to a Fortune 1000 got encrypted and they spent $20 million decrypting. So those are the things that come kind of skew those numbers into that $500,000. But the important thing is that the estimate that we have is that it jumped by 144% in 2021 from 2020. So if we think that this is going to be going away, it's not. It's only going to become more and more lucrative for the attackers as folks, as the world, right, keeps getting pwned by these and stops and doesn't effectively collaborate on those. The FBI is trying to do a lot of work. The federal government is trying to do a lot of work, DHS and others, as well as a lot of private sector entities and organizations to counteract this. But the reality is, the question is, how many of those go unpublished or unreported? And the vast majority of companies are not wanting to report on this. Why? Because it's exposing them, I think, to liability. But the bigger reason why a lot of organizations aren't reporting on it is that they don't know how. They don't have an effective mechanism to communicate and convey the technical artifacts or the operational artifacts on what happened. And that's where the kill chain can come in and help out. Be able to say, this is what happened. Here's how we remediated. This is what we did. So everything that we saw in that previous kill chain doesn't show the remediation steps, because that kill chain can actually continue following down into the remediation sector, right? But if we had an ability to digest and consume all the technical information from your incident response, your threat hunting, and everything else that was related to that attack, all the logs and everything in an automated fashion, right? That's what we're here for, to be able to then, from that, all those different data points on a graph data model, bring it up to you where you have a unified view on it.
And I think you nailed it, Daniel. Is that to better understand where you are, communicate and resolve it, because it happens so quickly and can be so pervasive in an organization. And we've seen this across everybody. There's nobody I don't think anybody's been exempt from it.
No. And the reality is that nobody's exempt from it. And maybe an individual organization is exempt from it. But what about your partners? Or flip that. What if you get attacked? How do you know that your partners or your supply chain or other members in your organization, your affiliated larger organization, are not being impacted by that, right? And so if you have kill chain analysis that you're doing, post-mortem kill chain analysis on attacks that were successful in your space, or even kill chain analysis on attempted attacks, but you keep following them through, like sandboxing maneuvers, right? You say, we identified it and we stopped it, but let's see what it would have done. Now you have those kill chains that you can map to, and then say, hey, broader network partners, supply chain, look out for this, because this is what we keep seeing happening to us. Then maybe the Colonial Pipeline outage maybe wouldn't have been as severe if that would have been done right. If they would have been, little known fact, Colonial Pipeline outage, that was through a third party partner of theirs in their supply chain, right, that got into there. So that's why if they would have been communicating in an automated fashion their threats and their incidents, instead of just being siloed and not, you don't want to share everything. Obviously, I don't want to share my company's information on my emails and all that, my local file store, but I do want to share when my company has been ransomware attacked, or it's been, I've suffered a DDoS, a denial of service attack, right? Those are the things that I can come out and share and say, this is a TTP, is what happened.
Right on. So I'm going to ask this real quick, because there's a question I do want to get to. What is your biggest cyber challenge? Is it meeting the issues with the president's putting out? There's a lot of memoranda out there, a lot of agency memoranda coming down, depending on the agency, obviously. Is it consolidating and understanding your data? Is it resolving my cyber issues quickly with minimal resources? There's the first one. Finding resources to help us with detection and response, and collaboration of threats and resolution across my agency and then other agencies, right? I think that was one of the things that I've heard over and over again from different agency heads is, I just don't know what's out there sometimes. And because when your butt's on fire, it's hard to pick up the phone and communicate to somebody else that your butt's on fire. You're trying to solve your own problem, right? That's part of that.
That's exactly right.
And so we have a question from Mary. I don't know how many people are on this call. Simply tell me to look up on YouTube, but is this software? Where does it sit in the cloud? It's more than just the software, I think, Mary, but I'll let these guys talk about that, both the combination, because Daniel, you have the tool, and then there's the implementation of the tool. That's what you handle, right, Stephanie?
Yes.
So
yes.
You want to answer that for Mary real quick?
Go ahead, Dan.
Sure. So if I get the question right, it's Mary's asking about how can we effectively remediate something that was in the cloud-based?
No, she's asking, is this software and where does it sit?
Oh, our software. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is so we have two different delivery mechanisms for the platform. One is on-premise. So for our government clients who either have an air-gapped requirement where, within a top secret enclaved environment, we support that, as well as on-prem in GovCloud. It can be fully deployed AWS, Azure, Stack, does not matter. And then we also have internally hosted for our clients SaaS models, where you can just have your nodes, it's all encrypted, it's private, nobody can see your data, right? But then you can create sharing profiles between different organizations and formulate those kind of relationships. And all that, of course, is backed up with our partnership with B Technology. So Stephanie and crew will assist with both the training and deployment and managing and running of that within different government spaces or client spaces.
So it's on-prem, right?
Mm-hmm. It is on-prem hybrid. You either have the on-prem option or you have the cloud-based version or the SaaS, pure SaaS, where you just pay for a node that we host for you.
Got it. Very cool. Stephanie, you want to add on that of what you do once they say they need it?
No, he explains it extremely well. I can say as far as deployment, it's mere minutes. I mean, it doesn't take long to get this set up for anybody. Got it.
And Kenneth says, I realize that your invitation could have been a fish. You're right, Kenneth. That's why you have to know, and you have to check the links, all those kinds of things.
It absolutely could have.
It wasn't though, was it? Because you're here and we're real. At least last time I checked. Anyway. All right. So part of what this is flip it. So we know that there's big problems, right? So then how do we use this to empower the organizations so that they can take action quickly and help others take the action that they need to do?
Yep. So Dave, this is a combination of, I like to think that it's a strategy issue in a lot of the clients that we're talking to, because let's face it, if you have an organization, any group of people, and you go up to them and you're like, hey, we want you to do XYZ now with your day-to-day processes. And oh, by the way, we're going to insert an administrative check in there to make sure that things are being done the way that we want it to be done. There's a little bit of resistance to that at the analyst operator level, right? For example, in the sales environment, sales folks originally were very reluctant to embrace CRMs that were unified across the company, because then everybody can actually see what work they're doing, what work they're not doing, who they're reaching out to and contacting, and so forth. It's also why Jiro's and tools like that were a little bit pushed back in the 80s and 90s by a lot of my compatriots in the government space. But building a strategy around reporting and communicating is very important, not just like kill chain data, but also how are you going to effectively visualize. So kill chain is part of that. How are we going to standardize our reporting, and how are we going to do these things? But it has to come down from the top. There has to be a strategy built around saying that we will share this, we will collaborate in this way. And all that requires a bunch of tooling and training down the chain, right? And that requires workforce skill set and understanding of why we're doing this, right? So that's one of the other things too, is that the flip side of having been an operator, one of the frustrations that I had in dealing with folks way higher up the chain than myself was not understanding the questions that they were asking. I'm like, yeah, it's evil, it's bad, and here's why. And they're looking at me going, I don't understand a word of what you just said to me. But if I had an ability to say, hey, this is what in the kill chain, this is why you care about this, because it allows them to gain access to these resources through this highly technical stuff you don't need to worry about. And then the stuff I didn't need to worry about, which was the impact that treasure trove of data that they were worried about, right? They're going, oh shoot, we need to be able to preserve this. Okay, how are we going to work together better? How are we going to collaborate now on resolving this, both at a technical level and a business level, strategy level?
Yep. And that gets to this. And communication is what is the key on all of this. Understanding,
yeah.
Always.
What do we do without Dave? What do we do without PowerPoint, right? I mean, obviously there's the jokes about death by PowerPoint.
That's right.
But there's also the death by, Excel spreadsheet and so forth like that. We have to have tools that engage on the human level, the ability to, I can sit and go and walk through log files on an IIS server and understand what's happening. And in my head, it makes total sense. I'm like, oh yeah, I see why this is an issue. I need to go do XYZ to remediate this. But how much easier is it to be able to walk into a boardroom and say, amongst your peers and say, guys, this is what we're working on. This is why we care about it, in a visualization that human relatable, cause, effect, in our processes, right? And how all that bakes together.
Yeah. Fantastic.
So you got to have a delivery mechanism, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Delivery mechanism. You got to have a way to distribute it, and first you got to be able to see it and know that it's happening. And to the point of some of the folks that came in earlier is like, hey, make this easier for me to understand, because I'm at the director level and I need to understand what's happening. But if you start talking bits and bytes, they're going in a coma, man. I'm telling you, they're definitely going in a coma.
They should, because if you take those same operators and you start talking numbers and cents and spreadsheets to them and business processes, they're going to go into comas, right? Because it's different. Right. It's no knock on anybody. It's just a difference in focus in our professional spaces, right? And that's where making actionable sense of the data is so critically important, right? As an employee, the actionability of what the people in finance do is my paycheck. I get that. That's actionable data, right? I can be like, oh, I can go to the store, I can do XYZ. The flip side needs to be happening in cyber, where we can take that data, make it actionable by the other chains, up and down the chain, right? Where others can take it as a direct data feed. And that has to be automated, to the earlier point that one of the teams was making. And it also has to be tied in. So you can't just give you a kill chain without giving you the supporting documentation that you can then take and plug into whatever partner ecosystem or whatever the tools that you need to. But then the flip side also has to be in there, to where they can drive down and say, okay, have we blocked these services? Or so threat intelligence identified this C2 node. Now our partnership with this other data source, like WizXML API, identified that the same team that stood up, that same malware team that stood up that one C2 node, malware node, now there's 49 other ones. How do we make sure we block all 50 of those so we never get proactively, right? We're not going to be getting hit by those as well.
Yeah,
that's what we're doing here.
So Dan, you could actually give everybody kind of a real world example. So I think most people know about the Amazon outage. Most people know about the Colonial Pipeline and how much time it took for those agencies to be able to identify what that kill chain is and get matters resolved and be able to do your shopping or get gas prices back down to a reasonable level at that time. You have a real world example where you went in and did a side-by-side comparison with an agency that manually did the kill chain versus what you did. Can you just give them a quick 30-second, this is what happened and this is what happened when?
Absolutely. So our focus at Collab is automation and removing the redundancy, right? So cyber experts should be cyber experts. They should be honing their craft skill, tooling and capability should be their main focus, and then going after and remediating. It shouldn't be, how do I copy and paste this data and then make it look pretty in a PowerPoint or a Microsoft Word presentation. Also, how do I go through these logs most effectively? How do I consume all this? I have 27 different data sources. How do I consume that data and make sure I have a data lake? That's where Collab comes into play to say, let me automate that and streamline all that process to where now you have to focus on cases, incidents and events and cases. So we did that, to your point, Stephanie. We sat side by side with they're a Fortune 500 company. We've also done it in the government sector for National Guard unit, and put our technology in their hands and said, hey, let's go through some of the cases and events that you're working on, map through ours, map through theirs. And the reality is that when you have a graph data model and I want to stay away from the technical jargon, but when you have an automation platform and a data analysis platform that is empowering those visualizations and collaboration on being able to display and report on the data, it goes from a matter of days to go through a major incident or a major attack to a matter of hours, literally. And we have those proof points. We've been doing this for quite a while. I wish I had had this back when I was in the government, because frankly, it would have made my job a lot easier and my bosses would have been a lot happier with the data and output that they would be getting from me, because they could make sense of it, right? And understand it, and then provide me with their strategic guidance. I need you. Oh, you're this specific organization with NSA, and you want to reach out and go talk to somebody at the FBI because you think that matters. If I could have presented my data in a better way, it would have way easier short-circuited that to be able to get in touch with those people at that organizational level.
And that goes to what you were saying, and the actionable items, the delivery mechanism, and the ability to help each person understand what their role is. That was one of the questions. Show me where this is in my role. And everybody's role is different. And sometimes, as you mentioned, there's a lot of stovepipes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we operate a lot of times in stovepipes because we can't be paying attention to what everybody else is doing. We're in our lane. And that's one of the things, and there's a lot that you if you could talk about it, you could talk about. You can't even talk about some of the things that you've been involved in tracing and connecting to things over the course of time. You just can't talk about it.
And that's the same, not just for me, but for any operator, MNDAs and everything, and NDAs that they have to sign and everything else.
That's right.
Yeah. But what if you had an ability to talk about that in a technical level, from an impact level, but without revealing your internal data? Yeah. That's when that collaborative capability in that reporting.
That's where the magic is, right? That's where the magic is, and the communication, collaboration, without exposing methods, maybe
without exposing confidential, private methods, all those things, right? But the big key, I think, the linchpin to making that embraceable and actionable, to overuse a word in this briefing, right? The key thing that needs to be in place is automation of that. Yeah. You cannot have this without a platform or framework that automates that. Otherwise, you're just going to be keep drowning your your workforce by telling them, oh, by the way, I also need you to provide me with a kill chain analysis on this.
And
they're like,
that's something else that it also does help with. You have your automation, and something else to talk about too is, when you have your junior cyber analyst versus your senior might know that, hey, we got this malware and I need to go check these 7 different resources to do my report, where a junior person might only know about 5.
That's right.
So you're going to miss a couple key pieces of data, and you could still have things on your system that you need to get rid of. And that's another part of this is, once you say, I want you to check 8 pieces of data, it will always, every time, check those 8 pieces. So it helps your junior analyst get more up to speed and more effective quickly.
Yep.
Helps with your resources.
And just for everybody's edification, you didn't invent the whole chain, the kill chain concept. That came, and that's why we did the supplemental resources, another handout, so you can get right to these articles. You got Verizon, little company called Lockheed Martin. Not sure anybody else knows about those guys here. Rapid7, IC3, all these folks, right? This is to help you understand the implications of kill chain, and also the automation pieces that Colab has come up with, right?
Yep. This is industry best standards, best practices for this process. And then what we have done is made a wrapper that automates the taking your data and putting in that kill chain matching along the best practices as put forth by government and other private sector entities.
So every agency has their own, obviously, missions and all the things that are mission critical to them, as well as their internal processes. Does what you're saying is you take what happens within that agency and look at the best practices and kind of marry all those things together so that.
Yeah, each agency has their own internal reporting formats. For example, they have their own different silos where they want to put their data. One organization might use Splunk, another organization might be using Elastic, and so on and so forth, right? Or you might be using a doc data store, SharePoint, and so forth. And what Quillab is that junction box between the external data, the external threats, and all that, and the technical team, the work that they're doing, and merging it into that way.
And making it actionable. Easy to see, easy to read, turning the verbiage. I'll use USDA versus DHS, right? Totally different languages get spoken in those agencies, right?
Correct.
And so you're taking those languages and then even potentially building a bridge between USDA and DHS as well.
Correct.
Is that possible?
Yeah, because Quillab is able to take the data that comes from any other Quillab source. So if I create a bunch of reports according to what Quillab wants to see, my organization wants to see, and I publish those internally in my company, and I might share those out with my partners. My partner, Stephanie, might have her own way of doing that internally too with her own reports. But the Quillab nodes, because they're able to then bring the data in and synchronize it and not action it, but render it in a way that they can be bidirectionally seen, it's a natural translation between the two, and there's no hiccups between organization A and organization B on the display.
That's cool, man.
Yeah,
I didn't even know that type of thing existed. I was thinking more along the lines of helping
normalization. Data normalization is what it's all about, right? And then eliminating silos, data normalization, and then getting it into the right hands. And
it sounds like you don't have to rewrite if you're with USDA, you don't have to rewrite your internal work to meet DHS. Then you have a way to be able to bridge the gap between the two.
Exactly right.
That's phenomenal.
Right. That's called sharing profiles. So we share case to case. And you can selectively choose, do you want to just metadata? Do you want to share the actual malware, actual IP addresses, emails, and everything? Or do you want to selectively go through and say, I'm only going to share this based off of this profile? Maybe it's classification level bounded, right? I only want to share confidential, but nothing secret or top secret. Then Quillab on the sharing profiles, you can have a direct sharing going right and back and forth.
Very cool. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of stuff in there, and some folks are going to want help in either meeting President's memorandum or other agency memoranda. You want to discuss a current issue? How do you automate your kill chain? Combining my current tools into single pane of glass. You mentioned Splunk and a couple of other ones. Elastic, I think you said, right?
Elastic, right? Correct. That's absolutely basically any data silo.
or you'd like to discuss something else, please contact me and then just let them know how you want that to happen, because we want to make sure you get that done. Additional questions. I want to make sure we go back to some of the communication questions. I think you solved a lot of that, because that's part of even more broad than I thought. I thought we were talking about individual agencies, but you're talking about communication across the board as well. Very cool. And then let's see, is there anybody else? There were some questions about getting to the PowerPoints. I think we solved you got all those solved. I see Catherine got to be able to get it. That's good news. So you do get a copy of that. Let's see what else. Is there anything else in here that I missed? All right. Well, while you're answering that, as I said earlier, there's no obligation to buy from anybody. If you'd like to discuss things with B Technology, WOSB Hub Zone, those are two of the pieces that Stephanie has, but that's the icing on the cake, because you actually know what you're doing a lot of work already with some of the DoD folks, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes.
And if you need, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if you have the WOSB piece, and if you know a lot of folks in this market, I know you do. So if there's anything else that you'd like from them, you can reach out. If you need partners for 8A or SDVOSB, I'm sure you can figure that out. That's not complicated, right, Steph?
Not at all. Not at all.
All right. So you will get a recap. End of the day, you have the briefing presentation, links to the session docs, as well as the video. And if you want to talk to these folks one-on-one, that's what they're here for. And you're welcome to reach out to them directly as well. I really appreciate it, Daniel. There's a lot of agencies that I've talked to over the course of time that can use this as a tool. They definitely need it. They just don't know how it works. Is there a way to do pilots or anything for you to be able to show them how it works within their organization as well?
Yep, absolutely. We can either do an on-premise POVs or POCs, and we can also do very easily also cloud-based ones with test data and test connectors, and so you can get a feel for how all that works. Phenomenal.
Well, I really appreciate it, guys. Great job. I learned a whole lot for myself. Without getting too much into the weeds. Great job.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, man, it's good. And Stephanie, good stuff. Congratulations again on what you're doing. I know anytime you're starting a business, it's been 5 years now. It's not just start, right?
It's been 5 years. I've been officially doing the business full time for about 3. So
there you go.
Yeah.
And that is awesome. Well, congratulations on that. And great. Best of luck to both of you. And we got 4 folks that want to talk to you within the next 30 days. So we'll make sure you get that. And you will get those pieces going on. Any parting comments whoa, what happened there? I'll just go ahead and stop the share since something weird went on and happened. But there you go. Any parting comments from you guys?
No, thank you so much for hosting us, Dave. We really appreciate it. If anyone has any questions, again, it's not a obligation for anything, but if you want more information on how to possibly collaborate with your tools, what you can possibly do to help get your response times faster, we're open for any type of a discussion.
Yeah,
yep.
Love it.
And if you're in the DC area and you want to grab a glass of wine or a beer, hit me up.
That's right. You're in Columbia, right? That's where
I'm in Columbia, Maryland. That's right.
All right. Not too far from me. I'm in Ellicott City, just a little further north than you. So fantastic. Great job, guys. And like you said, feel free to reach out, and appreciate all the information, feedback as well. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dave.